Hello? Is anybody there? As you can see, I have started doing some videos where I'm standing, and now I have another video that I'm recording where I have my phone set up so you guys can have a little bit of perspective. And I thought it would be cool to see a little bit of behind the scenes on how I'm recording these episodes. I also have taken my glasses off because I'm just tired of dealing with all the reflection that I have from my window. I hope that the camera is not gonna be off focusing me as much either. So, anyway, let's get started and get into this podcast episode because this intro is just way too long now. A couple of episodes ago, I was talking about what to do when you're scared to make the move, to move to another country. And today ties into this topic a little bit further down. And I'm going to talk about the dangers of feeling isolated when moving to a new country. I think this is a kind of a syndrome that a lot of us have who have moved to a new country and dealt with loneliness and feeling isolated. But if you haven't moved yet in your life and you're planning to, this is definitely something that you should pay attention to and just be aware of it ahead of time before anything bad happens with you emotionally or mentally, because it did with me, and I think that I didn't take it too seriously, or I thought that's normal, or something is wrong with me and I shouldn't feel all of these feelings. But now, meeting so many of you who've been through this and doing all this research and just experiencing life in general in a foreign country makes me realize that how I felt and what I've been through before was something that I should have paid attention to and asked for help. So why do we even move to a new country at the first place? I know that some of us, like I mentioned, are moving for a job or studying or just to adventure. They're moving alone already, or with the goal to live a better life or live in a country and culture that they admire. But in our case, it is for love. And it might not even be forever. Maybe you're just moving there temporarily, or you moving there as a first step if you're in your relationship and you're gonna maybe go somewhere else. I think all of us who have moved a few times in their life, they probably feel this urge of, all right, what's next? Where else can we go? Or what else can we do in our life? We shouldn't just live our whole life in one place, right? So it might not be forever. And it's very, very exciting for the first time. You are in love. You feel this new start, this fresh start, and you feel really, really excited. You may be excited to escape your old life, the boring place where you live, or maybe you don't have a good job there, or you can't really find love. Actually, we're talking about you already found love, so maybe that's why you're moving away from the place that you don't like anymore. And so ultimately, at first, you have all of these great feelings and exciting feelings to move to this new country. So when I say isolated, I don't only mean physically isolated, that you just not going anywhere, you only go to your job and then you go home because you don't know anybody, or you're just home because you can't go to work. So physically you're isolated from being social, from other people around you, because you just don't know anybody and you're just scared to get to know other people, or you have language barriers and things like that. But so not just physically isolated, you can also feel isolated mentally and emotionally. Maybe you do have a lot of people around you, families and new friends and co-workers and roommates and things like that. Your partner is with you, but you still feel very isolated and lonely because you are having a hard time connecting and you're having a hard time making people understand where you come from and the values that you share, people just don't you just don't have that connection that you used to have in your life before. So to share a little bit my story when I was struggling with this was when I moved to America in 2008. I did not expected any of this to happen. I was in love. I just wanted to be with Adam, and I was in the beginning of my career, just finished school. He found a job here and he said, "Let's get married and let's live together here." And I said, "Sure." And so I moved here. That was all I thought about, nothing further down. I wasn't thinking about how I'm gonna work here, what am I gonna do, how I'm gonna live, am I gonna feel happy, what is this place, how we're gonna live together. So I came, everything was amazing in the beginning. Adam was showing me around and I got familiar with the place, that typical honeymoon stage. We were happy to finally be together. And then just a routine started. He started going back to work every morning and I would be home alone. I would study English. I would do some house chores, cooking. I would go to the store, and then he would come home from work. Sometimes he would even come home for lunch, and then we would eat, hang out together. That was pretty much the highlight of my day, and then go to bed. And that was every day. And on the weekends, we would go see his family. We would go see his friends. We would go do all the activities and going to hockey games that we did, traveling around, seeing other people, hanging out with people, doing some games. I don't know, there were just a lot of games and playing all the time, video games, things that I have never had before in my life. And to be completely honest with you, I didn't really enjoy, and they knew that. They knew that I have different interests, but I was so grateful and thankful to be able to be here and for people showing me all these things. I didn't want to be rude. I wanted to be respectful and I wanted to fit in. I wanted everybody to like me. So I was trying to do what everybody else is doing. I was really, really self-conscious about my language. My English was very bad and embarrassing, so I would rather not talk. If I did, I couldn't really express myself, or my husband was just having his good time. And this is also a part of the story, that he was away from his town for 2 years also. So when he came back essentially with the wife, he really missed his family and his friends and his everyday life. And so he was really enjoying getting back to all of this routine, to reconnecting with their friends and seeing what's going on. A lot of them were having babies, and I always felt isolated from all of this environment and all of this friendship. There were a lot of stories that being told that I wasn't part of, histories, backgrounds that understandably I wasn't part of, but I also wasn't included in. Basically, nobody really cared that I'm there. And I don't blame anybody. Let me just say that, because these people, most of the people that I met in this small town, they have never left the state or the country. They have never learned another language. They never had to deal with living in another culture or learning about another culture, or needed to implement other cultures or learn about somebody who's different, and not just look at it as an experiment or as just an interesting thing to talk about, or I don't know what I'm talking about now here. So anyway, these were the feelings that I had. And obviously I wanted to travel around. So we did that a lot, that I really loved. And I was just connecting with my husband, but he also had these other connections that were fulfilling his life, and going to hockey games, doing some hockey that he really loved. He went to a job that he got paid for, and I didn't get paid. I didn't have a job. I couldn't work because I was waiting for my permanent residency, and he was, climbing up on a career ladder and that's just kind of how our life was starting out. And then I got pregnant 3, 4 months later after we got married. So I was obviously super, super excited. I always wanted to have children. I always wanted to be a young mom. And I was just overly excited. And since there was not much for me to do in this foreign country than sit around and wait for my husband, I finally had something, some goal and passion and some purpose in my life. So I started a blog. I was writing about my pregnancy. I was taking a lot of pictures. I documented everything, took notes, make spreadsheets and checklists, and I did a ton of research. I knew everything about what's going on with me and what is going to happen. I got ton of books, Hungarian books that my mom sent me, and there wasn't much online back then. 11 years ago, there was no like forums or groups. You guys have it good now because you can just go on Facebook and find groups or connect with somebody on Instagram and be like, oh yeah, I feel like this too, and we should probably do something about this. No, I was just alone. I had my family and friends that were home in Hungary that I spoke to. By the way, that was also part of my daily routine. When my husband would leave the house, I would open up the laptop and call my parents on Skype. For them, that was end of the day, so they would come home from work, have dinner, and sit down to chat with me. I would talk with my sister, my mom mostly, and I would just share with them what's happening with me, what are the new things that I noticed, things that were new in my life that I have never did, things that I tried, food or going to the store or going for a trip somewhere. And I was also connecting with my friends back home, and it helped me a lot, but it also pulled me back because that kind of was feeding my soul, and I didn't feel the need to meet new people, or that maybe, hey, I should probably reach out to other people and try to fit in and try to explain to them that why I'm different and how I feel differently. Only that I didn't really know how to explain to them because of my language barrier. But anyway, and the other thing is that having the connection back to your home, I was essentially talking with people who also didn't really go through this in their life. They don't really know that feeling of moving to a new country. They were people who were amazed of my bravery and saying, you were crazy and that's amazing that you could do this and it's so cool for you, and I'm so jealous that now you live in America and you are married and you go to all of these amazing places, and then there are other people who would be jealous or say that that's a big mistake and how dare you leaving our country and you betrayed us. And there were many of those kind of people. I'm just being dramatic here, but I'm sure that you have some of these kind of relationships, people that make you feel doubt your decisions. So anyway, that's how I was living my life. And then we had our baby, and I felt very, very connected to her. We would do everything together all day, every day. Understandably, because I didn't have a job, and there was, even after I got my residency, there was no point of finding a job when I just had a baby. And also, another cultural difference that we had is that in Hungary, the moms would stay home for 3 years with the child until the child goes to daycare, essentially, and that's when the moms would go back to work. Also, the daycare is free in Hungary, so it wasn't even a question about if that's going to happen. And here in America, moms would have 6 weeks and then they go back to work, and then the child would go to a childcare or somebody else is watching them. What I really love that they have really flexible schedules, so they can usually families can work out and find a way when one would stay home and the other one could go to work and things like that. But in our case, I thought that that's just normal that I stay home with our daughter, and there was not even a question that I should find a job because there was just no point for it, especially having to pay for it. Why would I pay for somebody to raise my child when I can just stay home? We were getting by just fine with my husband's paycheck. We weren't really greedy or needy financially or materialistically. It's not like we wanted a fancy house or car or anything like that. We did spend a lot of our money on going back visiting my family to Hungary because that was my pretty much only wish and desire to get from my husband, for him to take me back home so I can see my family at least once a year. And thankfully, my husband was okay with that, although it was really hard for us financially. But that's just part of the deal sometime when you marry somebody from another country, that you often have to spend a lot of money to travel. So maybe many of you think that, oh, you're so lucky because you had your husband's family and friends in a town, and we are going to a foreign place that we don't know anybody, we don't have any support or any relationship build up that when we can start from. And this may be just based from my experience and because of my failures that I had. I think that that would have been a better option for us to just start fresh in a brand new place, and where we feel equal. We feel like we're a team who are going through these bumps in life and trying to figure things out in a foreign country together. But I felt alone and lonely in this situation because my partner wasn't there with me, and he didn't really understand that I was even struggling with this. I'm not blaming him because it's not like I was telling him this. I didn't even know that I was struggling with this feeling because I thought that I shouldn't be. So I ignored it. And let me just say that again, I didn't have the language skill good enough. Not that I do now. I think that I'm still struggling to express myself in the way where he wouldn't misunderstood me or say like, why did you say that? This is not really how I meant to say it. So anyway, imagine back then when I didn't have any English knowledge. I know a lot of you think like, how did you even guys got married? Well, we got married because we fell in love and we felt this connection that we didn't feel with anybody else, and we just felt like we want to be together for the rest of our life, and everything else we will just figure it out later. So anyway, yes, maybe some of you would think that I am lucky to have that I had friends and families already put there for me when I moved to a foreign country. But for me, it was just pulling me away from my husband even more because I saw him in this environment that I wasn't part of. I didn't used to be part of, and then I just couldn't fit into there. He would talk differently to them with slangs and fast and differently, and then he would talk differently to me, and there was just complete disconnection. And then there were also the cultural differences, the culture shock that I was going through. For example, he would say as a goodbye or bye, see you later, he would say I love you to his friends who were female, and that was, gave me a really bad feeling of why he says I love you to these girls. I thought he only loves me. But then I just kind of noticed that that's just what they say here, which was really weird for me because I would never say I love you to a boy or to a friend that is a boy in Hungary. That would be super weird. But just this example, like it wasn't that we went home and I said, you know what, this really bothered me. Why do you guys do this? Or I want to understand a little bit more. So understand this cultural difference. No, I just kept it for myself, and I was just eating up inside of me and just trying to think that this is okay and that's just normal and just part of life, and let's just push it under the rug. And I also felt judged a lot of times when I was trying to bring into some of my Hungarian traditions or my beliefs. I did an episode 28 when I was talking about Hungarian things that are weird in the US, which is more a lighthearted episode. And I'm not trying again to be very depressing here. It wasn't really this bad that people would talk back to me or anything like that. No bad things have ever happened. It was just something that I was dealing deep inside of me. And like therapists would say, a lot of things that we see are actually how we see ourselves. I don't really remember how this is said correctly. So essentially, if we judge somebody and we think that somebody thinks something about us, deep inside, maybe that's really how you think about yourself. You're just reflecting your thoughts and your feelings on other person. So that's why I'm saying that this might not necessarily intentionally happen from other people, but that's just how I felt. So I felt judged and I felt misunderstood, and I felt like my traditions are ignored. For example, Christmas holiday, we were really struggling to blend our Christmas traditions together. And our first Christmas was without a child, so that was kind of easy. And we were experimenting, and that was my first Christmas in America, so I really loved to have that American Christmas, and I really loved it and enjoyed it. And my mother-in-law put lots of effort into making me feel home and showing me all the traditions that they had. But after years and years, when two people are together in another country, we try to kind of balance our traditions out, and we want to do both together. I just remember crying a lot when I had my baby in the first couple of months, and I know that's part of the having a baby and it's normal, but it was really hard for me to feel even more alone when I'm trying to, have a baby and have all these questions to my mom and my sister. And I remember calling them and I cried a lot in Skype, and that's if you cry a lot when you are in a foreign country, that's probably a sign of feeling isolated and feeling lonely. But I felt that I should be grateful for my situation. I didn't want to disappoint anybody. I didn't want to embarrass my husband. I felt like I need to be grateful that I'm able to stay home with my baby. I don't need to work, that I'm able to be in this country, and all these feelings that made me pull back from expressing my unhappiness and my worries. And one thing I did that was really good for me and I would recommend for all of you is I started a blog and I was taking a lot of pictures, and maybe that was just because that's my passion and I really enjoy doing it, but just thinking back now, it helps me a lot to stay connected with the people I know, to discover new people who were reading my blog that were going through the same thing, not necessarily in a bad way, because I wasn't really writing about my struggles. I was more writing about my experiences and all the good things and the new things that were happening with me and exciting things. And I was connecting with a lot of other readers about the same situation, and taking pictures helped me feel not so guilty that I can't be with my family, that I'm raising my first child, my parents' first grandchild, away from them. And that made me want to take pictures and share it with them all the time. And so doing these activities for myself when the baby was sleeping, I would write the blog posts, just helped me stay connected and helped me, value and appreciate what's going on with me. Kind of the same thing what happens now with doing this podcast. I really feel like this is kind of like a therapeutic way for me to discuss these feelings that I forgot about. I don't have them anymore, and hearing from other people going through these things just really wants me to help others and make them aware of this. That this is real. Like, you can even get depressed from feeling lonely in another country. And I just want to help people now. And selfishly, I also help myself because as I'm thinking and getting ready for the episode, I'm kind of realizing, oh, yeah, this is how I felt, or that's why I felt that way, just kind of talking it out of myself now. I also thought about how come when I moved to Italy and I lived there for 2 years, I didn't really have this issue. And I thought about this a lot. Like, I moved to Italy, I didn't know anybody, I didn't speak the language, I was lonely, I didn't have friends, my family was far away, and I was going to school there and I was working. So it made me think, how come I didn't have these feelings that I had in America? And that's probably because in America, I had a husband, I had a partner that I loved, that I was worried about, that I was relying on, that I didn't develop a deeper connection to have, to feel as a team, to feel as a united family. And I had all of these things that were pulling me back from achieving what I wanted in life, that I couldn't work, or that I was kind of forced to stay home. I wasn't really forced to stay home. Like, I could go do whatever I wanted, but I didn't really have any goal or purpose to go anywhere other than the grocery store. But in Italy, I was alone, in sense of wasn't in a relationship. I had roommates, I had friends at school, I would go to work and I had people around me, so I wasn't alone. I did feel lonely because there wasn't anybody from Hungary or anybody I could connect with in a deeper level, but I never really felt sad or isolated because of this. It was just a fun thing that I was doing, and I really loved that I moved from Hungary and I was living in this culture that I admire. I really loved being with Italians, so it was definitely a different level of experience. In my episode 31, I had my husband come to the podcast, and he gave me an interview that we did back in Milan where we met, and we were talking about the hard times that we had communicating with each other, and that become our culture, and that become our issue in our relationship ultimately, that we weren't able to communicate or express our feelings or our wishes. We felt judged for our differences and things like that. So that down point that came in our relationship was when our daughter was 3-4 years old, and I just got really overwhelmed with everything that I was just sharing you previously that was going on for 3-4 years, and I just had enough. We completely got distance from each other. There wasn't any connection between my husband and I, and so I decided to give up on all of this, to get a divorce. I wasn't planning on going back to Hungary because we had our daughter, and I didn't want it to, I just wanted to make sure that our daughter has both of her parents in the same town and have a relationship that's continuous and strong. So we got separated, and we're going through a divorce, and that was kind of a wake-up call to my husband to realize how important this marriage and family is to him, and all the pain that I've been going through throughout the years. So he really focused on self-improvement and getting me back, getting our marriage fixed. And he was fighting for me. He was fighting for our family. Thankfully, successfully. It took him 4 months, but I finally decided to give another chance to this relationship. And since then, it's like having a new husband. It's like having a new marriage. We are so aware of making sure to not run into any huge problems like we did back then. We completely changed our life, and we are trying to stay focused on these problems. I mean, thankfully, we don't really have this issue anymore because I acclimated to this country. We moved away from that town, so now we are in a bigger city, which I talked about a lot, how much that helped me being able to find a Hungarian community and being around people who are more culturally diverse and more acceptable with others. And also just, my English got better and I was able to find my passion and find my career and do what I love and what fulfills me. I mean, we still have issues and I still have some self consciousness inside me, but it's definitely taught us to pay attention to our feelings and pay attention when we feel that things are getting a little bit off track. So I still haven't gotten into the meat of this episode. I talked so much about my own story that got a little bit off track, but I think it's good. It's always good for others to listen our own experiences and not just try to find a solution or try to look, okay, how can we fix this or what can we do? But we get inspired by listening other stories. So that's why I found it important to share my own. So I'm going to put a pause on this episode now because I have recorded an almost 2 hour long episode on this topic and decided to just break into 2-part episodes. So, this first part was mostly about my personal experience and what I learned from it. And the next week's episode will be more about sharing some resources, articles that I found, and how can we manage this feeling of loneliness when we're living in a different country. You can find the show notes and everything that goes with this episode at editvashadi.com/feeling isolated abroad. And if you feel like sharing your journey with me or you have questions, feel free to join my Facebook group called Getting Married Multiculturally, or you can just hop on Instagram and send me a DM. I would love to hear your story or any advice that you have that you would like me to share with others. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. Bye-bye.